The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. That time Jesus withdrew to the region of Tyre and Sidon. Behold, a Canaanite woman of that district came and called out, "Have pity on me, Lord, Son of David. My daughter is tormented by a demon." Jesus did not say a word in answer to her. Jesus' disciples came and asked him, "Send her away, for she keeps calling out after us." He said in reply, "I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." The woman came and did Jesus homage, saying, "Lord, help me." He said in reply, "It is not right to take the food of the children and throw it to the dogs." She said, "Please, Lord, for even the dogs eat the scraps that fall from the table of their masters." Then Jesus said to her in reply, "O woman, great is your faith. Let it be done for you as you wish." The woman's daughter was healed from that hour. The Gospel of the Lord. At the time of the birth of Jesus, we hear in the Gospel of Luke in chapter 2 that the angels appeared to the shepherds. And they were glorifying the fact that this child has been born in Bethlehem, and his birth will bring great joy for all the people. All the people. When Jesus is taken to the temple by Mary and Joseph, and they meet Simeon, Simeon says, "My eyes have seen your salvation, which we prepared in the sight of all the peoples, a light for revelation to the Gentiles, and glory for your people Israel." Now, to our ears, that doesn't seem like anything unusual. To the people listening, that would be shocking. A light for revelation to the Gentiles. The Jewish people had no contact with Gentiles. They looked down on them so much that the Gentiles were considered unclean. If you touched one, you had to go through the rites of purification, and you, for heaven's sakes, would never marry one. But here Simeon is prophesying that Jesus will bring a light for revelation to the Gentiles. The Jewish people were very tribal. When they left Egypt following Moses out on the Exodus, there were 12 tribes that came from the 12 sons of Jacob, also known as Israel. 12 tribes of Israel. By the time they got to the Promised Land and Joshua was leading the people into the Promised Land, there were only 10 tribes. They had lost 2 of them. 2 of those tribes had totally disappeared because they had intermingled with the pagans. And so that was a great fear among the people, that their reality as tribes would disappear if they weren't careful. And so it was a very strong commitment on the part of people is to maintain that tribalism. Don't do anything to destroy it. But in 587 BC, when the Babylonians took the people off to Babylon, that totally destroyed the tribes. Totally mixed it all up. And so when they returned in 537, they reconstituted themselves into one tribe. Tribe of Judah, the Judeans. That's why they're, looking back, called Jews, because of Judeans. But they saw themselves all as a member of that tribe. And so their commitment was, well, at least we're going to maintain this tribe because we're God's people and the Messiah will come to us. That was the reason when Mary became pregnant with Jesus and was not married, her life was put in danger when the women found out about it. She's an unmarried woman who's now pregnant. Don't know who the father is. It's a threat to the tribe. And so she was at risk of being stoned. much like the account later in Jesus' public ministry when he encounters the woman caught in adultery. People were going to stone her. They were going to stone Mary for the same reason, because she was pregnant and not married. They didn't know where this child was coming from. But Joseph, of course, as we know, steps in and marries her. And so that settles the issue. In the last several Sundays, we have heard the accounts of Jesus as we progress through this Gospel of Matthew. We've gone through about 3 or 4 chapters now. We've heard about all of the parables, the sower and the seed and the woman with flour, and all of those parables that Jesus shared. And then we came to the place where Jesus finds out that John the Baptist has been murdered, and he wants to go off by himself and mourn his loss. But as we heard in that gospel, the crowds follow him. Lots of them, thousands of them. So Jesus doesn't get a break, and so he feeds them. 5,000, the few loaves of bread and a few fish. And then last Sunday, we heard about Jesus still trying to get some quiet time. And so he sends his disciples off across the lake, and then he walks on the water in the 4th watch of the night in the storm. He's still trying to get them a break, and that's why now they're moving up into Tyre and Sidon. So get away from all those people, all those crowds that are following Jesus. The only way to do that is go into the pagan area, which is what Tyre and Sidon was in. Phoenicia. It's now the southwestern part of Lebanon. First you hit Tyre, and then as you move up the coast, you hit Sidon, and you're on your way to Beirut. So Jesus has gone up into the pagan area to get a break, let his disciples rest. But then he encounters this Canaanite woman, Syrophoenician woman. She's a pagan. She's heard that Jesus is in the area, and so she seeks him out. Tells him that her daughter is ill. Please come and save her. Jesus ignores her. Why? Because she's a Gentile. She's a pagan. And Jewish people had no contact with pagans, no contact with Gentiles. So when she approaches him as a person of his culture, he ignores her. Not mean to her, he just ignores her. He's not going to talk to her. But the woman persists. And the disciples complain and say, send her away. Get her out of here. She's bothering us. Send this Gentile pagan away. We're supposed to be resting. But she keeps calling out after Jesus, and he says to her, I was sent only to the lost sheep of Israel. That's not what the angel said, and that's not what Simeon prophesied. Jesus didn't seem to know that. Didn't know what Simeon had said maybe about being the revelation to the Gentiles. He said, I'm only sent to the house of Israel. Only sent to come to the chosen people. But the woman persists. And she says to him, Lord, Kyrie, in the Greek, help me, eleison. Help me. Help me. We translate it as have mercy on us, but in Greek it actually means help us. Eleison, Kyrie, eleison. And Jesus' response is that he uses a term that's derogatory, that's prejudicial. He says it's not right to take the food from the children, that is the Jewish children, and throw it to the dogs. Those are the Gentiles. They refer to as dogs. Jesus is being kind in that statement because even though he's a product of his culture, he softens that saying. What he might have said is in the Greek, megala sekule, that is big dog. You're a big ugly dog, you Gentiles. But he doesn't. In the Greek, he uses a different word. uses gonorrhea, which is a low puppy. Gonorrhea. You don't take the children's food and throw it to the puppies. But the woman persists and says, Lord, help me. And she says, even the dogs, the puppies under the table get the scraps. Jesus listens to that, and that deeply moves him. He is a product of his culture. Remember that he wasn't dropped down from the sky. He did not come formed as God and man in his conscious mind. He had to learn. He's a human being like us in all things but sin. He had to be taught how to talk. He had to be taught his numbers. He had to be taught how to read. Mary and Joseph had to do all of that, just like all of us do in raising children. Jesus had to be taught. But what Jesus demonstrates in this passage is that he has the ability to learn. He's heard this woman, and all of a sudden maybe this prophesy from Simeon comes into his mind. He was not sent only to the people of Israel like he said. He's sent as a light and revelation to the Gentiles also. So you hear Jesus change his mind. He grows in his perspective. You will never in the gospel hear him talk like this again. This radically changes his view. So it occurs to him he's not just to the house of Israel, he's come to everybody. That's new to him, and you can feel the drama of that. The woman's daughter was healed in that hour. So we too are called as Christians to be people who can be taught, people who can learn, people who are willing to change. We're not simply blind products of our culture, blind to prejudice and racism. One thing about this interchange between Jesus and the Canaanite woman is this isn't a racist comment, because they're all Semites. Jesus is a Semite, and so is this Canaanite woman. So we're not into a racism thing. They're of the same race. What we're into is the prejudice, cultural prejudice, also religious prejudice, because they didn't see the people as clean from a spiritual standpoint. But we're called also to examine our beliefs. What have we been taught? What's our deep feelings deep down inside? We harbor negative feelings toward people who aren't like us. Oh, in our minds, of course, I'm a good person. But deep down in our hearts, what lurks down there that was given us by our culture, just like this attitude towards Gentiles was given to Jesus at the time as he grew up? Are we willing to examine that? Think about it. Where does that negative feeling come from towards those kinds of people? Maybe they're a different race, or they speak a different language, or they have a different religion. But can we feel that prejudice well up in our hearts? Maybe so deep we wouldn't even speak it, but it's still there. I don't like those people, hate those people. I don't know why. Any more than Jesus was prejudicial towards this Canaanite woman. We're called to be like Jesus and to learn. Frederick Douglass was a famous abolitionist. He was an African-American during the Civil War. He met with Abraham Lincoln 3 times in the White House. When Lincoln died, Frederick Douglass said that one of the greatest strengths of Abraham Lincoln is that he could learn. He could rise above the prejudice of his culture, to honor the slaves, to honor the black people, to honor them and free them. That ran completely contrary to the majority culture at the time. But Abraham Lincoln could learn, just like Jesus. So we too are called to learn about our own prejudices. Don't know where they came from. Why do I feel like that? It's important we examine them, and when we feel them bubble up, stop them. Change our mind. Think about it. Why do I have that feeling? And then give it all to the Lord and know that Jesus struggled with a very similar thing. And he too had to change his mind. He had to have an aha moment. Let it go. And be the Savior the Lord sent him to be. As Simeon said, you're the Savior of the chosen people, but you're also a light to the Gentiles. We too are a light to all people, no matter who they are, no matter where they came from, no matter what their religion is, no matter what their language is. It doesn't matter. As Christians, we are called to love all people and give them all the fair chance and a fair break. As Catholics, we've suffered persecution in this country, and not that long ago. In the 1930s, the Ku Klux Klan took over the state government, passed a law outlawing Catholic schools. They would destroy the Catholic Church. The only thing that saved us was the U.S. Supreme Court. So we've been on the other end of that. So it's important as Catholic people that remember that we too have suffered that kind of harm, and that we not participate in that with other people, and that we reach out to them with the love and the healing touch that Jesus showed with this woman. Even though a Gentile, Jesus realized that he had come to save her as well. So he comes to save us all, no matter who we are. And we are called to treat all people as brothers and sisters in our life.